Right, welcome everyone to the part 2 of lesson 4 of the Interlocked Bible study. And it has continually challenged me as I go through this and serve in the capacity as a facilitator to our growth and knowledge as believers, as we dig into God's word and see the validity and how reliable God is in his word, and in comparing those and bringing those into contrast with the the way of the world, the worldview of today. And we have identified over our study that there are many worldviews in motion right now. And we've identified that anything that does not come from God and from his mouth or his word uh, comes from another source. And it is unfortunate when people listen to other sources besides the creator, the one who is all knowing, infinite in wisdom, who is all powerful, who created everything. And it only makes sense that we would seek him for information. If we want to understand how this world works, let's seek God in his word, the maker, the creator. That only makes sense. So today we're going to go in through some of the responses that people have had to this tension between God's word and his ideas versus man's word and his ideas, and the invisible source of information known as Satan, Lucifer, as played out in the Garden of Eden when Eve listened to the serpent and listened to his voice and put the serpent's voice above God's voice and his word above God's word, and then made a decision to rule over herself and to share that fruit with man, her husband. And Adam chose to rule over himself, and it brought in a lot of heartache that we know today. So as we approach these responses that Christians or Bible believing people or church goers or religious folks or even the people of this day, we see these three primary responses taking place. The first group has surrendered the truth. They've just given up. No, God doesn't exist. Science proves that God does not exist. So why would I believe in religious systems that are only there to control and to manipulate and to get money out of us? And so there's all kinds of reasons why people have surrendered the truth. Science, I say, is really above all. It's called naturalism, the natural flow of things. That is where we're going to find truth in the world and the way it works. And so scientists have become like God to people, having the ultimate and final authority in people's lives and how they conduct their lives. And we identified last week how this naturalistic worldview is bringing people to a conclusion that is not surprising at all. We often, as Bible believing Christians, are shocked when we hear the comments of the world saying children that are born are gender neutral. Therefore, we need to let them at the age of 2, 3, 4, etc. years old begin choosing what their gender preference is. Why would that surprise us? Why would that shock us when this is a natural outworking of naturalism, where people believe man and woman can evolve, that we indeed evolved from mammals, specifically the chimpanzee and the ape, the monkey family. So if we can evolve over a period of millions of years from that point of view, why would not gender also have the ability to evolve and to continue to morph and to take shape and form and just be a construct of society? These things should not surprise us. It is a natural outflow of that worldview. And so people have surrendered the truth. And then there's a second group that have accommodated and reinterpreted the truth. So they say, no, I'm a religious person. I believe that there's a God. I believe that there's a Bible. I believe it's true, but I also believe that science is true. And so I'm going to interpret the Bible in light of the scientific evidence. And I'm going to figure out how within the biblical context, science makes sense, and how within the science context, the Bible makes sense. I'm going to accommodate these two things. And so we see all kinds of theories emerging. Why would that surprise us? This is a worldview issue. It shouldn't surprise us when we have people wrestling, trying to figure out how can we fit millions and millions and millions of years to allow for the naturalistic worldview to be true, where it states that we all evolved from matter, and that this matter grew into a more complex system of like we have today. And so people are trying to find where in the world we can fit in all these millions of years. And there's several gap theories, gaps in genealogies, gaps between Genesis chapter 1 verse 1 and chapter 1 verse 2. So there's different theories and interpretations that are coming up trying to make the two work together. And then the third group that we're going to look at is the group that counteracts these falsehoods, the authority of man versus God's authority, and staying consistent with God's worldview, God's perspective, and aligning our own ideas with his ideas, and having just the basic tools. Any one of us can go very deep into how things work as scientists, but most of us, I would say the general population of Christians, aren't scientists. And so we need to be equipped with just some of the basic tools of what is it that God views, what is his view, what's his perspective, versus what the world, man's opinion, is saying is truth, and to be able to counterattack, and to be able to walk ourselves in truth peacefully in this world, effectively in this world, and to have a defense for the truth. And so we're going to look right now at 6 incompatible issues with the Bible and with these accommodating and surrender models that we've seen. Well, let's look at 6 different points today. The first one is the problem of death before the fall. So the major issue with evolution is that it's built upon chaos. There was explosion, gases floating, and conflict. There was this conflict, tension that causes explosion. So it's this entire world and construct is built out of chaos. It's built out of death. You see that millions and millions and millions of years ago, there were dinosaurs, and these dinosaurs coexisted, and they killed one another, and it was the strongest that survived, and eventually they became extinct. Man's power became more powerful, and so man ends up ruling this world, the more powerful and the one that could survive. And so there was these millions and millions of years of death and destruction and pain and suffering that this worldview is built on. But it completely flies in the face of God's description in God's word. And it is the number one problem to trying to accommodate these millions of years within the biblical narrative, because in the biblical narrative, it is really a relatively short amount of time. We're looking at just 6,000 years, approximately 6,000 years. And death, as we have found out, is abnormal. God did not create death to be a normal part of man's story. Death entered into the world after Adam and Eve sinned against God. So it wasn't God that designed all of this death and destruction and chaos, and then built a little piece of heaven on earth with this Garden of Eden. No, he built in 6 days all of this beautiful creation, preparing every single day to make it habitable and extremely comfortable for Adam and Eve to live in perfect harmony with nature, and that nature function with perfect harmony. And at the final day, in Genesis 1:31, it says God looked over all he had made. He looked over everything. This is not exclusive, it's inclusive of everything. And he saw that it was very good. It was exceedingly and overly abundantly beautiful and wonderful and well. Why? Because his creation always reflects his glory. It reflects his nature. It reflects his personality, his likes and dislikes. God's creation reveals himself and who he is. And he calls everything excellent, because he is excellent. He is good. In fact, I think in the English language, it's so underrated, this word good. It's like he could have used awesome and totally fabulous and wonderful, but it just he simplified the text here and just said it was good. It is so understated. And so the problem with death before the fall is that it just simply does not fit in. We do not see all these years of death, pain, killing, murder, disease, thorns, suffering, struggling, and extinction happening before the creation. God said it was good. Genesis 3:17-19 talks about where this source comes from. And I mentioned it in passing, but here's the verse. And to the man, he said, since you listened to your wife and ate from the tree whose fruit I commanded you not to eat, the ground is cursed because of you. The ground is cursed because of you. Your actions brought this about, Adam. All your life you will struggle to scratch a living from it. It will grow thorns and thistles for you. Though you will eat of its grains by the sweat of your brow, you will have food to eat until you return to the ground from which you were made. For you were made from dust, and to dust you will return. Adam will die. His body will once again deteriorate when life is removed. The spirit is removed from his body. His body will return to the dust. And we see that, and nowhere will you see a cemetery today dig up the remains of a human being and find a fully preserved, heart-beating, blood-rushing body with life in it. It's dead, it's deteriorated, and it's returned to dust. Okay, so God's word is true here. And this death comes as a consequence of Adam and Eve's rebellion. Okay, that's where it's sourced in. Romans 5:12 says, when Adam sinned, sin entered the world. Adam's sin brought death. So death spread to everyone, for everyone sinned. Why do we hate death so much? Why do we struggle with death so much? It's all around us. More so now, it seems, as we open up our Facebooks and see friends and family and famous people coming to their life's end. We see this because of disease, one specifically known as COVID. And this is that we fear death often, and we're like, where does this come from? God, why did you do this to us? This is God's fault. No, it isn't. This is Adam and Eve's choice and living out the consequences of their choice. We have to be so careful about our choices. So careful. If such a small decision with Adam and Eve caused such catastrophic results, how do you think our decisions are today? I imagine we think our decisions are inconsequential. What I do in secret is inconsequential. But believe me, all ideas have consequences. All choices have consequences. We do indeed reap what we sow. and today we are reaping presently sickness, pain, suffering, sin, death, chaos, conflict, wars, because of Adam and Eve's choice. And sin and death spread to everyone. So once again, just as a reminder, this is abnormal. God did not intend for it to be this way. He did not create this. He created perfect harmony and unity within all of nature and all of creation. Satan introduced ideas into man's kind and said, hey, guess what? If you rule, things will go even better. You'll do a better job than God. And Adam and Eve found out very quickly that was a bad idea to listen to Satan's word and put his word over God's word. And now we have been ushered into this abnormal existence where good and evil are constantly at odds with one another. This is not normal, and this will be brought to an end where God will indeed judge sin. He will judge death. He will then cast it into the lake of fire where it is contained forever and ever and ever. Let's make decisions today that affect our lives today, and that will have an effect on our lives in eternity. I do not want to be a part of that containment of evil. I want to be separate from evil. I want to be normal again. I want to be whole again, created once again in the image that God created me, in his image. I want to be restored. I want to be made new again. I want to have that communion and fellowship and free thought and communication with God, where I'm understanding his mind and his thoughts and his goals and his desires and wishes for me, because I know that he's good. I trust him. I think that he has his best in mind, and my best in mind, as I listen to him. And that's going to bring about his honor and his and glory for his name, and that I will thrive listening to him. I want the same for you, that you also be made whole. No, we're not talking about prosperity gospel where all of a sudden you're going to be rich, or all of a sudden all of your sins are going to just dissipate and disappear, and you will no longer struggle and lust after evil things. No, that is going to happen in the future, and God, we'll get into those details later on in our study. But I want for you to be able to also thrive in this newness of life, back to the normal plan that God has for you and me, how he made Adam and Eve before the fall. That's where I want to go. That's where I want to live today. And I know I'll live that way in the future after death has been dealt with once and for all. So on a second point, as we go down these 6 items, the Old Testament, which is a very long portion of scripture, took the creation account literally. You know how there's so many people that are like, no, this was a bunch of myths. Adam really wasn't a real person. Eve wasn't really a real person. These are just myths and legends that are derived from man's own ideas. And but the Old Testament says, no, this is true. This is this is literal. The 6 days of creation that are laid out in Genesis chapter 1 and 2 are literal days. They're not thousands and millions of years crammed into one creation event. It was literal days. And Second Peter mentions that you must not forget this one thing, dear friends. A day is like 1,000 years to the Lord, and 1,000 years like a day. And people will take that, accommodationists will take that, and they'll try to say, no, the Bible supports evolution. Because to God, even though he says one day, it really doesn't mean one day. It really means 1,000 years. But it is completely taken out of context. We mentioned this last week. And Peter was really discussing here within the context future events, that Jesus would return and come back for his church, the believers that trusted him. And from man's finite perspective, they say, no, he's not going to come back. He's taking forever. What's wrong with this Jesus? Hey, he's not coming back. And Peter's encouraging him and saying, look, God is patient, and he is waiting that more and more and more people could repent from their thinking, repent from their sin, and embrace God and his word, and to accept the salvation that Jesus has generously extended to us. And so he is patiently waiting. And we know today, we can look back and say, Jesus has patiently waited at least 2,000 years. At least 2,000 years. We can look back now and say, wow, okay, yeah, for God, this time flies by. But it's like one day is 1,000 years. So it's completely taken out of context, this verse, and in relationship with the creation account. Exodus 28-11 says, remember to observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. You have 6 days each week for your ordinary work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath day of rest, dedicated to the Lord your God. On that day, no one in your household may do any work. This includes you, your sons, your daughters, your male and female servants, your livestock, and any foreigners living among you. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens, the earth, the sea, and everything in them. But on the seventh day he rested. That is why the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and set it apart as holy. God's not in the scripture. God's not talking to encouraging the Israelites to work for 6,000 years, and then on the 7,000th year you can finally rest 1,000 years and not work. Hello, you can't even go there logically. God is talking about 24 literal hour days, and it's how it still works today. You and I go to work on Monday. Now, maybe in Israel back in the day, and maybe even today, they begin work on Sunday and work and rest on the Sabbath, the seventh day, Saturday for us. So Western society may differ a little bit from Eastern society, but the same principle thousands of years later still applies, where 24 hours are still 24 hours. We work 6 days and we tend to rest on the seventh day. These principles come from God, and they haven't changed really. Even if small groups have kind of tweaked it and twisted it, or someone wants to work on a Sunday here and there, or whatever, or on a Saturday, that people have varied from culture to culture, but the bottom line principle has not changed. Okay, another issue is that the New Testament took the creation account very literally. Now, our most famous person in the New Testament is Jesus Christ. And if you believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, don't you think he would be reflecting his Father's word and saying the same thing he is and agreeing with his Father? So why would Jesus lie? Why would Jesus be in conflict with his Father? That is completely and 100% inconsistent with biblical truth, with this biblical narrative from Genesis to Revelations. It's inconsistent. Jesus tells the truth, and Jesus says, and he's using the example of how these guys are really real. These are real people. In Luke 11:50, it says, as a result, this generation will be held responsible for the murder of all God's prophets from the creation of the world. Get that? From the creation of the world. So Jesus is affirming the creation narrative, the creation story, the creation account. From the murder of Abel, which was written and recorded in the Torah, the book of Genesis. From the murder of Abel to the murder of Zechariah. Zechariah was a real person. Abel was a real person who was killed between the altar and the sanctuary. Yes, it will certainly be charged against this generation. So you see, Jesus is taking the creation account literally. It's not, in Jesus's mind, it's not a myth. It's not a fable. It is a literal account. Luke also presented the family tree, the generation of generations of Jesus and where he came from. And it was very detailed, passing on from who Adam was begot Enoch, or no, Seth, yeah, and each one begat so and so and so and so, and it followed all the way back down to the generation of Jesus, tracing it. And so Luke takes this very literally. Jesus takes it very literally. Jesus also talked about male and female from the creation. Haven't you read the scriptures? So Jesus is saying that the Bible is true. The Old Testament's true. They record that from the beginning, God made them male and female. Where's that recorded? It's recorded in Genesis. God made them male and female. And he said, this explains why a man leaves his father and mother and is joined to his wife. And the two are united into one. Since they are no longer two, but one, let no one split apart what God has joined together. So Jesus is saying they're real. They're not phony. You can believe and trust Genesis. So if we disagree, and this is a warning, if you and I disagree with Genesis and the account in Genesis, be careful, because you're disagreeing with Jesus. We would be saying that Jesus is not trustworthy, that he's a liar. And be careful, because if Jesus affirmed the truth of the Word of God and the reliability of the Word of God, and we throw Genesis out, we throw Jesus out, what do you think is we're going to throw out? We're going to throw out the whole counsel of the Bible, the whole truth. Genesis all the way to Revelation would not be reliable. So you throw out Genesis, you're disagreeing with Jesus. And if we're going to throw those two out, we might as well throw out the entire book of Scripture. And that's the difference between the accommodationalists and those who have completely rejected the Bible. Accommodationalists try to syncretize and fit in, whereas the first group just completely rejects. This kind of, it's a challenge to those who are accommodating things. It's because basically you're in the first group. Be careful trying to mix truths that are in conflict with one another. Two complete separate narratives. The biblical narrative, what we see in Genesis to Revelation, does not mix with evolutionism. It doesn't mix with millions and millions of years of evolution. It would behoove us to make a clear distinction and a choice. I will believe or I will not believe. I will trust or I will not trust. Don't be on the fence. It's not a good place to be. It's very painful. Paul, in the Bible, New Testament, takes Genesis literally And when it's not literal, when he's using an illustration, he'll let people know as well. So Paul said, when Adam sinned, sin entered the world. Adam's sin brought death, so death spread to everyone. For everyone's sinned. Yes, people sinned even before the law was given. Yes, Adam's one sin brings condemnation for everyone, but Christ's one act of righteousness brings a right relationship with God and new life for everyone. So Paul's explaining, where is sin coming from? How did it get here? He believes that Adam is a real person. So when Paul does use illustrations, he lets us know. He makes it clear to people. For example, here in Galatians 4:22, the scriptures say that Abraham had two sons, one from his slave wife and one from his freeborn wife. The son of the slave wife was born in a human attempt to bring about the fulfillment of God's promise. But the son of the freeborn wife was born as God's own fulfillment to his promise. And so he explains then that these two women serve as an illustration of God's two covenants. The first woman, Hagar, represents Mount Sinai, where people received the law and enslaved them. And now Jerusalem is just like Mount Sinai in Arabia, because she and her children live in slavery to the law. But the other woman, Sarah, represents the heavenly Jerusalem. She is a free woman, and she is our mother. So you're seeing that Paul's, when he does use allegory or illustration or an example, he states it. Jesus does the same thing. And so it's clear, okay, is this gonna be literal, or is this gonna be figuratively? Okay, so yeah, and here's the logic that Paul's using in this graphic of trying to come to a point. All right. So the Bible takes genealogies very seriously. It clearly lines out, and I've already mentioned this in detail, so I won't go over it here, but there's no room here for gaps in between family lines. The Bible just simply does not leave room for debate between Adam and Jesus. And then we have very clear accounts from Jesus to today. We have really good historical data in Christian and secular sources that put us at 2,000 years. That's the point here, and I won't hammer it any further. That God's word is true, and there's just no room for conversation about these gaps of millions of years. So here's a problem of treating science and the Bible as equally valid. It's exactly what Eve did. And again, I don't want to keep hammering this too much, but it's exactly what Eve did. And so let's not follow Eve's way. Let's learn from her mistakes. Let's learn from Adam's mistakes and choose to put God in a whole separate category as creator, and that we are the creation. And let's not trust the created and the created's word. Let's trust the creator's words, and that he is infallible, that he is in a completely separate level than we are. He is perfect and holy. We, on the other hand, as now, especially as fallen creature, are not holy and therefore not trustworthy. So don't trust people. Just don't take them at face value. Check out the facts. Hey, yeah, that's a word for today. Be a fact checker, but check it out with God's word. So the Apostle Peter says this about God's word. He says, above all, you must realize that no prophecy in scripture ever came from the prophet's own understanding or from human initiative. No, those prophets were moved by the Holy Spirit, and they spoke from God. So that's why I believe that all of scripture, from the very beginning in Genesis all the way to the very end in Revelations, that God's word, written word, was inspired. It was spoken from him, and that he moved man through the Holy Spirit to write down his thoughts and his idea. It explains why these prophets were so accurate in their description of the Messiah that was to come. And when Jesus came, how he fulfilled to the very letter exactly what the prophets foretold. It's because it came from God. So let's not treat science with the same level of authority. Are there provable scientific facts? Yes, absolutely. Well, we'll get into that. But let's put God in his word as our final authority. And this goes into the third group of people. And this is where I want to encourage you and I to land. If we're going to land somewhere, let's land here where the Bible is our final authority. And everything that we see around us, all information that we see on television, all information that we see in documentaries, in thesis write-ups, and in scientific investigation, whether it's about the vaccinations or about conspiracies, let's bring all of this under the authority of the Bible, God's holy word, and judge those thoughts and those ideas and those concepts on the basis of truth, and interpret them in light of God's word. And there'll be certain things that God's word doesn't spell out black and white, but he provides us a framework to be able to be wise about and sensitive to, okay, what is truth, and why should we not stray beyond, or what is insuspect and what is provable. Okay, so let's use God's word as a basis for that, and that helps us counteract certain falsehoods, certain truths that are based on a false premise. Okay, so we believe God's word is 100% accurate, and that mankind's knowledge is limited. God's word is infinitely true because it comes from an infinite God. Man's word is finite, and therefore we are in this process of discovering and learning. We know things today that were not known 100 years ago. In fact, it is very well known today that the advancement of technology has accelerated at an exponential rate in the past 10, 20, 30 years. If you want to go back further, 50, 100 years, then you will see an even more rapid pace of acceleration. My grandfather, who was born in the 1930s or so, grew up with a kerosene lantern, and there was no internet. The idea was not even conceptualized of how an entire global community could be connected together and use Google Translate to understand one another in basic terms. And my grandfather passed away using internet, and my grandmother was an avid Facebooker before she passed away. And so you have a rapid, amazingly fast acceleration of knowledge, but none of that compares to the reliability of God's word. God is infinite in knowledge, so he already knows what the end game is. We are in this process of discovery. Therefore, man is not 100% trustworthy. What he believes is true today, just give him a week or two and he'll find a new truth. I'm sorry, but that's not a good existence to be in. Let's land on things that are solid, unmoving, truths that are immutable. And that comes from God, who is unchanging and immutable. And then within this volatile world, this changing world, this mutating world of constant change, let's find stability in his word. Okay, so this group believes that the Bible is never wrong and understands that some science contradicts the Bible. Not all science. There's some intelligent people out there who have made some intelligent observations and provable in scientific truths. Gravity is still gravity, and it always has been gravity. God made gravity, okay? So, but there's some science that does contradict the Bible, and so you have to take that science and suspect and say, I bet you anything, our scientific friends and contemporaries probably don't have all the facts in place yet. If they did, they would probably come to an agreement with God in his conclusion as to why things are the way they are and why they work the way they work. So this brings that we trust that the Bible indeed is right. And so sometimes our science can be faulty or incomplete. We need to do more research. That's the idea where that this group goes toward. We who believe God's word is absolutely true, we default on, oh, okay, I'm going to suspect. I'm going to hold this concept in suspect until it's proven by God's word. If it's an agreement with God's word, then I can accommodate it into my worldview. Okay, so these ideas it historically began around the 1950s and 1960s, and it kind of came out of this frustration of the surrender of truth from the 1800s, those accommodating the truth in the church in the early 1800s to 1900s. And so more recently, we've seen this group of evangelical believers that are saying, no, I believe God's word is my final authority, and so we're going to rethink things here. And interestingly, this rethinking emerged from unbelievers, not Christ followers per se, but secular scientists, as they begin to say there's some major inconsistencies with what's going on with our Darwinian theories are coming up short. And Christians caught on to that and said, well, yeah, that makes sense. Of course, Darwinian theory falls short because God's word says there was creation, there was a flood, there was these biblical accounts. For example, sulfur, fire and sulfur fell down into Sodom and Gomorrah. Okay, so there's these narratives in the Bible that finally scientists are saying, oh yeah, okay, there's validity to this. There's and creationists took it and ran with it and said, okay, yeah, let's rethink how science and biblical truth, the biblical narrative, really jives and works together. You've heard of creationism, I'm sure, but creationism was kind of rejected in the secular school system that we have. It's very much rejected today too. And so this idea of intelligent design is what began to emerge as a way of saying God created everything, but not mentioning God's name in an antagonistic, anti-God environment and context. So that's what you'll hear a lot of. You'll hear a lot of creationism. You'll hear a lot of intelligent design folks who are helping make sense of how things work and why they work the way they work. And so what creationists have identified is that there's an underlining faulty assumption that is in man's presuppositions, and it has affected how they interpret what they see. So man, for example, has completely rejected that God exists. Naturalist scientists, evolutionists say God simply doesn't exist. So everything I look at and observe in a scientific lab or through scientific processes of proving, they definitely won't lead to God. God doesn't exist, so I'm going to find another explanation. Whereas creationists kept an open mind and said, okay, no, let's look at the evidence here, and the evidence is pointing toward a very intelligent designer. And the Bible says that intelligent designer is called Yahweh and Jehovah, Elohim, Jesus, the Word, who is with God and was God, and by whom all things were made. Okay, so those who have been studying the evidence say it points toward intelligent designer, and that intelligent designer has a name. Here's some of the groups, and I can copy and paste this and send it out by text. But here's some organizations with their different websites that are just full of information regarding studies that have been done by reliable scientists who are not just your fly-by-night researchers. These are very extremely well-known, renowned men and women who have researched and studied and are respected in the scientific communities, but are creationists, and they provide people like us the resources necessary to try to wrap our minds around abstract concepts and biblical truth. So one of the main ones I see on here that I'm familiar with is Answers in Genesis. You can visit the Creation Museum in Kentucky, and you can visit Noah's Ark right there in that area. And it just provides a nice concept or a way of experiencing God's word with a scientific twist to it. Okay, so I want to hopefully bring this chapter, lesson 4, to a close through some questions that people ask us. In schools today, children, and this is where worldviews are developed, in the home, in the school place, in the playground, but in formal school education in our schools, children are taught to categorize, and man is placed in a particular category. First, there's the living things and non-living things, and then there's animals, plants, fungi, bacteria, protists, and then man is placed in the mammal category along with dogs, rabbits, and other animals. And so what do you see happening here? It's as if man and animal are essentially the same thing, or the same material. And how would you feel as a child to know that you're really no better than a weasel, a flea, a rabbit? The chickens that we eat at Chick-fil-A, or the hamburger that we eat at Burger King and McDonald's, the steaks that we eat, we're no better than they are. How would you feel if you're just a hunk of flesh? I'm sorry, but that's what we're teaching in school. We're really not any more special than animals. It's by God's grace we don't have a lot of cannibals running around the face of the earth. We would probably head that direction if we let this go too far. So truth, God's word, says man is made in God's image. We're not just a chunk of flesh. We have a spirit and a soul, and we're made in a special way to have communion and fellowship with one another. There is no animal on the face of the earth that can have the wonderful intimacy of relationship like between a man and a wife, or a group of people, and man with God, his creator. There is no. We were made in God's image, special. Another question that comes up is, can science really determine the age of the earth? How do we sort that through? And let's look at an example, because there's a couple of issues that come up when we deal with this question. Um, there's a difference between observational science and historical science. Observational is where we can do experiments and confirm theories or hypotheses. We can repeat experiments to verify what others have discovered about the world. But in historical, it's more tricky. It's because we do not have access to all the information needed to actually get a good answer. And we can't conduct a test that can confirm or disprove a theory. So here's an example with this candle that you see on your screen. Let's pretend that you just walked through a door and into a room, and on the middle of the room is a table, and on this table is this candle, and it's lit, it's burning, it's been burning for a while, and then a friend comes along a little bit later and says, "Hey, when was this candle lit?" Well, you don't know because you weren't there. Okay, so you have to tell this person accurately when this candle was lit. Well, you're going to see the comparison right away between how we can figure out the age of our Earth. Well, no one was in the beginning, so how can we tell exactly when Earth began? All right. So the first method we could use to provide an accurate answer to our friend is to collect the right pieces of data and then do some calculations for that, right? So here's some of the data that we need. First, we have to know how long was the candle before it was lit. Was it a foot long? Was it 6 inches long? How long was it? Then we have to figure out the burn rate, or how many minutes does it take for it to burn per inch or per millimeter? How many seconds does it take per millimeter, etc. We have to find out the burn rate. Okay, and then the third part is we have to see what the present state of the candle is. How long is it now as it's burning today? How long is the candle? So let's say you're missing one of these pieces of data. Well, you can't come up with accurate information if you don't have all three of these accurate assessments in place. And then you have all these variables. Take, for example, let's say someone opened a window while that candle was burning, and all of a sudden you have air blowing through, which can create a faster burn rate. Well, how can we contemplate all of those variables over a period of maybe 2 hours or 3 hours of time? You're talking about all kinds of inconsistencies. So the only thing you're left to do is to kind of provide this average. What is a typical candle burn at when all conditions are right? So you provide this average of burn rate, and then you can kind of come up with a relative answer based on your theories. Your second method is to actually ask the person who lit the candle what time he did it. If you could track down who did that, if it was Frank or Harry or Joanna or Hannah, who was it that lit that candle? How long was it when you first lit it, and what time was it? If you did that, then you have an eyewitness, or you have the actual person who did it. Or if there was 3 other people in the room, you could ask them, do you remember, did you look at your cell phone or your watch when they did that? And so that's another method, and both methods are viable, but you're limited especially when we're looking at the Earth. Who was around when the Earth was created? Were you? I certainly wasn't. I was born 45 years ago. 45 years. Some of you would say, you're a young whippersnapper, Mike. Others would say, whoa, you're getting old. So I can't go back thousands of years and say, yep, I know exactly how. So who can? Well, you have to ask God, because God is the one that was there. He's the one that made it. Here's another issue that we run into when we talk about determining the age of the Earth. Take Adam, for example. Let's say hypothetically we had an opportunity to talk to Adam just a few hours after he was created. What does Adam look like? Well, from my eyes, I look at Adam and I say, oh, this guy looks like he is around, he's in his prime. And I don't know, by our assessment today, being in your prime might be around 30 years old, maybe, I don't know, differing of opinions. So he's in his prime. So that, let's say this guy's 30 years old, but then you ask Adam, he's like, well, no, I'm not 30 years old. I was actually created just a couple hours ago. So wait a second, how is it then that Adam looks like he's 30 years old, but he is only 3 hours old? How is it that the trees that surrounded Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden look like 100-year-old trees that were producing luscious fruit, fully mature fruit, so that they could eat and have their stomachs filled? So you're talking about some major complexities here. You know, if we try to examine the age of the earth by some of the existing data, we're going to actually come up with varying degrees of ideas. Because the earth at six days old looked like it could have been there for thousands of years. Okay, just an idea, just a thought, just something to contemplate. Here's Job's response. He's like, then the Lord answered Job from the whirlwind, who is this that questions my wisdom with such ignorant words? Brace yourself like a man, because I have some questions for you and you must answer them. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me if you know so much. So Job found himself talking to God, and he was making too many assumptions. There's some knowledge that comes from God, and we have to trust God that what he wrote in Genesis is accurate and true for us. So we have this choice. Are we going to reject or accept God's truth? Are we going to accommodate lies and reject God? Are we going to fully embrace God and his word? My encouragement to you is to choose God, choose him, and that his word is true. There's Christians that have been historically choosing God, that are key historical people. Augustine chose God's word. He chose to believe in a young earth, 6,000 years approximately. He chose a young earth. Martin Luther in his writings chose a young earth. John Calvin, John Wesley. Modern science, as we begin looking at the creationists, with the aid of creationists, we're coming to the same conclusions. We have a young earth, and go visit the Creation Museum along with the Noah's Ark experience. It is phenomenal to be able to scientifically understand that it is indeed consistent, a young earth with God's account of scripture, of creation. So God wants us to discover and to learn. He encourages us. He says in Proverbs 25:2, it is God's privilege to conceal things and the king's privilege to discover them. So let's be like these kings from Proverbs and find out and discover and be curious. Don't just take people at their word. Be curious, learn, research secular ideas, research Christian ideas, creationist ideas, and compare them with God's word and see which ones fit the best. I encourage you, because I wholly trust that you would come to the conclusion that so many scientists are that are objectively looking at scripture, objectively looking at the science and saying, yep, we're in a young earth. God's word is truly the authority here. I am not going to place my authority over God's word, but God's word over the authority of man's word. And so let's continue as we study next week, looking at this historical narrative, this historical biblical narrative, with an objective mindset, with a healthy outlook, but one that is by faith, saying, yes, if his word is true, I'm going to believe him wholeheartedly and not just partially. I'm not just going to kind of believe and sort of believe in some of the things he said and pick and choose. I'm going to 100%. If God's word is true, then I'm going to believe him for everything, not just some things. If he said it's a young earth, I'm going to believe it wholeheartedly. If he said he made male and female, I'm not going to accept that there are unlimited amount of genders out there that people can choose from. I'm not going to argue with gender ideas because God said it, male and female, and he made them after their own kind. Man and woman are still having little babies. Monkeys are still having little monkeys. Hippopotamus, little hippopotamuses. And it's still working the way God designed it. So Genesis is not a myth. It is truth. Next week, we're going to be looking at the account of Noah in the flood. And we'll be going over five different key things that we can learn, key truths that we can learn from the Noah account of the flood. And I encourage you to continue going over some of these lessons, going over some of the scriptures that we're reading here. Our next week's reading is Genesis 6, chapter 1, all the way to chapter 8 and 19. And come ready with some thoughts and ideas to share in our time of discussion.